So, hello. How many were here for the previous presentation that I made? Okay, almost everybody. Anybody here that's new that didn't see the 1 p.m. presentation? Well, welcome. So, in the 1 p.m. presentation, I covered the death of the global dollar standard. It may not necessarily mean the death of the dollar. I believe that we're going into a deflationary period first. When I wrote my book that was 2005 through the end of 2007, with some updates in March and April of 2008, and then it came out in August of 2008. I had predicted that there would be some sort of economic event, a crash or whatever, and the book came out just a month before all of that mortgage-backed security stuff started to unravel. And so the timing was excellent, and that's the reason the book sold so well. But in the book, I wrote that we were on a wild roller coaster of a ride, that we would go through we were expanding the currency supplies and on mild inflation, and there would be some economic event that would cause the threat of deflation. That was the crash of 2008. When I was writing the book, Alan Greenspan was the Fed chairman in the United States, and I said that Ben Bernanke would probably be our next Fed chairman. I had read many of his white papers and essays, and I had read his, when I was studying for my chapter on the Great Depression, I read his essays of the essays on the Great Depression, which is a book. It's his big thesis. It's the thing that made him famous. And I also read Milton Friedman's Monetary History of the United States and Murray Rothbard's America's Great Depression. So I got the viewpoint from a Keynesian, an Austrian, and a monetarist point of view before writing, so I could get a real balance in that portion of my book. But I said that he would do a big helicopter drop. I didn't call it quantitative easing. I called it a helicopter drop because they didn't have the name quantitative easing yet. And he fulfilled that. He did that. And I said that there would be a big inflation or reflation of the markets, and that happened. Oil had dropped back to $40 a barrel. It's now over 100. The stock market, the Dow was below 7,000 points, I believe, and now it's up at 16,000. And then I said that there would then be a real deflation, a contraction of the currency supply. Our currency supply relies on all of you to borrow more into existence constantly, and it has to be a greater quantity being borrowed into existence than we're extinguishing by paying off debt. When you pay your credit card bill or your home mortgage, the dollars that you pay those with vanish. The bank gets them, it cancels out a debt, but in canceling out the debt, those dollars are no longer on the books. The dollars that you may pay in base money, but when they credit your account, they're crediting digital credit dollars that they invented when you signed your mortgage application or whatever. And so I believe that we had the inflation followed by the threat of deflation, followed by a reflation, and now you are here. And there's going to be this big deflation, to which I said the central banks would probably overreact and print us either into a really big inflation or potentially a hyperinflation. That was my favored scenario, and the reason I think that deflation has to happen first is because looking throughout all of history, I can't find a single example where the masses, the population, gets rewarded for mass stupidity. It's usually the banks that end up winning, the big boys end up winning, and the average guy suffers at the expense of the banks. And if we went into with a societies all around the world being leveraged out, and our entire currency system on the planet being a credit system, not a money-based system, it's all based on credit. By the way, stop calling Canadian dollars or US dollars money. They are not money. Watch episode 1 of Hidden Secrets of Money. They're borrowed into existence. They are debt. Debt is not money. Debt does not retain its value. Thomas Jefferson once said that paper is poverty. It is the ghost of money and not money itself. And what we use today is fiat currency, national fiat currencies. They are the ghost of money and not money. This is the US currency supply, and newsletter writers all over the world have said that we're going into hyperinflation or something like that. Well, with it expanding like this, I've been warning about this, but I haven't said that we were going into hyperinflation. All the world is trying to expand its currency supplies right now, thinking that they can stave off deflation, and they can't. And I'll show you why. As they print currency, you can't get the public to take on more debt if they don't want it. As they print currency, velocity slows down. So this is velocity of money. It's how many times this base currency here, the purple line is base currency, it's the paper, US dollars, how many times they circulate in a year. What I find interesting, if you look at the expansion of the currency supply back here in the 80s and 90s and toward the 2000s, when you get it up here, it started to level off. But that was the same time the real estate bubble was happening, so velocity picked up to sort of counteract the leveling off, and we still had basically the same rates of inflation going on, or even extra inflation during this period when the currency supply was no longer inflating. Then everything crashes and we inflate the currency supply, but all of this is parked on banks' balance sheets. They want to make the banks not look bankrupt. And so when it comes to measuring this, it looks like it's parked on their balance sheets. It's on deposit at the Federal Reserve as reserves. And so measuring it, it looks like there's no velocity to that portion of the currency that they created. And because they're measuring velocity of the entire thing, and the portion they just created is parked, velocity suddenly drops to compensate. So velocity is falling off a cliff. So we don't have huge price inflation in the United States. And this is happening all over the world. They create currency, but velocity slows down. People don't use it as much to offset it. And Keynesians think that you can print your way out of deflation. And Japan is proving it. Year after year after year, for 30 years now, they've been trying, or 25 years, they've been trying to prove that you can print your way out of deflation, and they can't. They've been unsuccessful. So what are we doing? The rest of the world is trying. It's interesting. You remember the 70s was a bad period of time. There wasn't huge inflation going on here, but velocity was picking up. We had a lot of inflation back then. This is the total leverage in the world, in the monetary system. So you've got vault cash is the cash that banks have in the vaults should you want to go and take out some of your currency. And it's always a very, very minuscule portion of the currency supply. In the United States, I think they had $40 billion worth of vault cash when there was $850 billion in circulation back before the crisis of '08. And so basically, this is how leveraged societies are. And this chart, I'm actually going through some of a presentation that's a little bit old. This chart is at least a year to 2 years old, and this has actually risen again. But what it shows is the higher this is, the more unstable the system potentially is. And so it shows that we're still in a danger zone globally as far as credit goes. So now we'll go into these cycles, and I'll show you the reason I think a big deflation is coming. This is the wealth distribution cycle, I call it. And we only have data on what I think is just one cycle of what repeats throughout history. But you go through periods of time where a lot of a nation's wealth is in the hands of a very few, and then there's a backlash from that, and you swing toward the opposite direction when they pass laws.